Sacred Wild Book Club. We're getting there. There's
I
only,
know.
it's such a little piece of the book left.
And
The
then
10th and
that'll
7th,
be our halfway mark. We got two more books to do.
right? I'm excited. This has been such a journey, man. I can't even describe this timing, this journey, this process.
Yeah. So I
It's
was
it's crazy
telling,
how perfectly aligned it is with just life in general.
and it's that like synchronicity and symbiotic relationship. And it's like, what comes first? Like, is our life the way it is because of the book? Or is the book coming right at this time because of our life? Like, there's no difference. There's no anything. Like it all just is. That's what I was telling Des last night. She came over for a bit and I was just like, I've gone through this series, at least 3 times before in my life. And the first time was super profound in the space of like, oh, holy shit, I'm not the only one that thinks this way. Like there are other people, like being able to read my mind on these pages. But this time it's just at this core level, this DNA level, this like activating the codes that are woven into our being. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we are currently in the chapter called Forgiving. And we're at the top of 169, right? That's where
Yep,
we end.
yep.
Awesome. Uh, do you mind if I go first?
Please.
All right, so just a little overview. We read through, but at any point, if something hits you or you feel the desire to speak or to explore a piece, a passage that we're reading, do not hesitate to speak, to say something, to share your thoughts, to ask a question, or to name anything. This isn't we tried different formats and this seems to be the one that fits the best, where we read and anything that comes alive for us, we pause and we talk and we explore and then we just continue on the journey. So don't don't hesitate to, if something's bubbling up to be expressed, just say it. Be like, hey, this part hit, or it's usually like a holy shit, or something like that. That indicates the pause. So
I
please
think
don't.
so for with the platform it's on, because it does look like it's getting viewed. So I mean, if people are watching it outside of this setting, it's more entertaining. It's more to be able to hear the banter during, to be able to hear the context during, rather than reading for 20-30 minutes or even 45 and then talking the last 15 like that. We'll lose attention that way. So I think it's been very helpful to keep it going during.
Yeah, and thank you for naming that. All of the recordings of our past book clubs are located in the Sacred Wild community. So it's going to be under the path, and then scrolling all the way down, you'll see book club. And all of the different books, The Alchemist, The Celestine Prophecy, and all of the previous ones are broken up into different sections. So you can feel free to go back and listen to all of them, any of them, whatever feels alive for you if you want.
The it's also on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It is. Yeah.
not just on Sacred Wild, so it's open to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the YouTube channel is The Sacred Wild, and there's a playlist for book club. I need to organize that though, figure out if I can make different sections, just different playlists for the books, make that a little cleaner, a little OCD freak in there.
No way, not Jen.
You know,
You mean?
it serves, it's at a point where it serves instead of destructs. So constructs instead of destruct. All right. So We followed Curtis down the slope to an outcropping where we could look straight down at the gorge between the two hills. A man and a woman, partially obscured by the underbrush, were crossing the rocks below us, heading toward the west. That woman's in trouble, Maya said. How do you know that? I asked. I just know she looks familiar. The woman turned once and the man pushed her menacingly, exposing a pistol held in his right hand. Maya leaned forward, looking at both of us. Did you see that? We've got to do something. I looked closely. The woman had light hair and was dressed in a sweatshirt and green fatigues with leg pockets. As I watched, she turned and said something to her captor, then glanced toward us, giving me a clear look at her face. That's Charlene, I said. Where do you think he's taking her? I know, I got goosebumps everywhere.
It just got me.
Who knows, Curtis replied. Look, I think I can help her, but I have to go alone. I need both of you to stay here. I protested, but Curtis would have it no other way. We watched him as he walked back to the left and down the slope through a section of woods. From there, he crept quietly to another outcropping of rock just 10 feet above the bottom of the gorge. They have to pass right by him, I told Maya. We observed anxiously as they moved closer to the rocks. At the precise moment they had passed, Curtis bounded down the hill and leaped upon the man, knocking him to the ground and holding his throat in a peculiar fashion until he stopped moving. Charlene jumped back in alarm and gathered herself to run. Charlene, wait, Curtis called. She stopped and took a cautious step forward. It's Curtis Weber. We worked together at Deltec, remember? I'm here to help you. She obviously recognized him and moved closer. Maya and I made our way carefully down the hill. When Charlene saw me, she froze and then ran toward my embrace. Curtis rushed up and pushed us to the ground. Keep down, he said. We could be seen here. I helped Curtis tie up Charlene's guard with a roll of tape we found in his pocket and pulled him up the slope into the forest. What did you do to him? Charlene asked. Curtis was checking his pockets. I just knocked him out. He'll be okay. Maya bent down to check his pulse. Charlene turned her attention to me, reaching out for my hand. How did you get here? She asked. Taking a breath, I told her about the call from her office informing me of her disappearance and about finding the sketch and coming to the valley to look for her. She smiled. I made that sketch intending to call you, but I left so suddenly I didn't have time. Her voice trailed off as she looked deeply into my eyes. I think I saw you yesterday in the other dimension. I pulled her to the side, away from the others. I saw you too, but I couldn't communicate. As we stared at each other, I felt my body grow lighter, a wave of orgasmic love sweeping across me, centered not in my pelvic region, but somehow around the outside of my skin. I seemed to be falling into Charlene's eyes. Her smile grew, and I realized she must be feeling the same way. A movement from Curtis broke the spell, and I realized both he and Maya were staring at us. I looked back at Charlene. I want to tell you what's been happening, I said. Then described seeing Will again, learning about the polarization of fear and the group coming back and the world vision. Charlene, how did you get into the afterlife dimension? Her face fell. All this is my fault. I didn't know the danger until yesterday. I'm the one who told Feynman about the insights. Shortly after receiving your letter, I found out about another group that knew of the 9 insights, and I studied with them intensely. I had many of the same experiences you talked about. Later, I came with a friend to this valley because we had heard that the sacred locations here were connected somehow with the 10th insight. My friend didn't experience much, but I did. So I stayed to explore. That's when I met Feynman, who employed me to teach him what I knew. From that moment forward, he was with me every minute. He insisted I not call my office for security reasons, so I wrote letters rescheduling all my appointments. Only, as it turned out, I guess he was intercepting my letters. That's why everyone thought I was missing. With Feynman, I explored most of the vortexes, especially the ones at Cotter's Knoll and the Falls. He couldn't sense the energy personally, but I found out later that he was tracking us electronically and getting some sort of energy profile on me as we tuned into the locations. After that, he could hone in on the area and find the exact location of the vortex electronically. I glanced at Curtis, and he nodded knowingly. Tears filled Charlene's eyes. He had me completely fooled. He said that he was working on a very inexpensive source of energy that will liberate everyone. He sent me to remote areas of the forest during much of the experimentation. Only later, after I confronted him, did he admit the dangers of what he was doing. Curtis turned to face Charlene. Feynman Carter was the chief engineer at Deltec. Do you remember? No, she said, but he's totally in control of this project. Another corporation is now involved and they have these armed men. Feynman calls them operatives. I finally told him I was leaving, and that's when he put me under guard. When I told him he would never get away with this, he just laughed. He bragged about having someone in the Forest Service working with him. Where was he sending you? Curtis asked. Charlene shook her head. I have no idea. I don't think he intended to let you live, Curtis said, not after telling you all that. An anxious silence fell over the group. What I can't understand, Charlene said, is why he's here in this forest in the first place. What does he want with these energy locations? Curtis and I met eyes again. Then he said, he's experimenting with a way of centralizing this energy source. He's found by focusing on the dimensional pathways in this valley. And that's why it's so dangerous. I became aware that Charlene was staring at Maya and smiling. Maya returned the gaze with a warm expression. When I was at the falls, Charlene said, I moved through into the other dimension, and all these memories rushed in. She looked at me. After that, I was able to go back several times, even when I was under guard yesterday. She looked at me again. That's where I saw you. Charlene paused and looked back at the group. I saw that we're all here to stop this experiment if we can remember everything. Maya was watching her closely. You understood what we wanted to do during the battle with the soldiers and supported us, she said, even though you knew it couldn't work. Charlene's smile told me she had remembered. We've remembered most of what happened, I said, but so far we haven't been able to recall how we plan to do it differently this time. Can you remember? Charlene shook her head. Only parts of it. I know we have to identify our unconscious feelings toward one another before we can go on. She looked into my eyes and paused. This is all part of the 10th insight, only it hasn't been written down anywhere yet. It's coming in intuitively. I nodded. We know. Part of the 10th is an extension of the 8th. Only a group that's operating fully in the 8th insight can accomplish this kind of higher clearing. I'm not following you, Curtis said. The 8th is about knowing how to uplift others, she continued. Knowing how to send energy by focusing on another's beauty and higher self-wisdom. This process can raise the energy level and creativity of the group exponentially. Unfortunately, many groups have trouble uplifting each other in this manner, even though the individuals involved are able to do it at other times. This is especially true if the group is work-oriented. A group of employees, for instance, or people coming together to create a unique project of some kind. Because so often these people have been together before, and old past life emotions come up and get in the way.
That's got me fucked up that like 2 paragraphs ago, only part of it is I know we have to identify our unconscious feelings towards one another before we can go on.
Yes.
Wow. That's just
Like, can you imagine if we all operated that way? If the first step of creating a business, the first step of creating a community, the first step of getting into a relationship with somebody was not getting to know what you do for work or what you do for, what your past was or what this or what that, but exploring what we've experienced together before and what unconscious feelings lie. Like,
right.
I've had this desire to do a clearing with Des, like before we go further with anything else, and just be like, here are my fears. Here are my fears. Here's what I am afraid of right now. I am afraid that we're going to come across something where you and I have differing opinions and we're not going to be able to resolve it. I'm afraid that I am going to lose my sovereignty and liberation. I'm afraid of whatever the case may be. And allowing her to do the same, and then exploring those, allowing ourselves to go into a meditative state or hypnotic state. And where do those come from? Because it's not here.
Right. Right. Because I have that awareness a lot in a lot of my little circles. Like we've done this before. There's a journey this is a part of. This is not just this. And there's this deep knowing, but it's never explored. It's joked about. It's joked about. We've done this before. You know what I mean? That topic comes up all the time, but never the exploration of what that was.
And I think that's kind of the last week since I've been back, between watching The Good Witch over and over and reading this new book that I'm reading, Seasons of Moon and Flames by one of my favorite authors. She wrote one of the books that changed my life a few years ago, The Holy Wild. And like, there's this deep knowing. And I actually just did a post in the community about this right before we hopped on, about these parts of myself that I had been shaming and hiding and turning away, because that's what I was taught to do when I was a kid, with my, high sensitivity, with my deep emotion, with my deep connection to the earth, with these earth-based religions and spiritualities. And I was talking to this Des last night about, opening up to the witch part, right? Or the warlock or whatever. Those are just words to describe just what we're talking
about. Right.
Diving deep into what's outside of this life and this dimension. Where have we done this before? What has stopped us in the past? And let's not overlook it anymore. Let's not joke it off. Let's not shame it away. Let's not bury it because of embarrassment or humiliation. Let's really fucking look at this. Yeah. I'm really curious to see how this plays out in our lives.
That's a deep connection. It's so beautiful.
What?
I said it's such a deep connection. It's so fucking beautiful,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, that's the first part, is recognizing that deep connection. But then I feel like where we falter is when those sticky and heavy emotions come up and we try to fix them, when they're not meant to be fixed. They're meant to be guides. They're meant to say, hey, here, it's just like any failure. Any failure is information. And this is where, like, I feel the ego gets so underutilized. And the ego isn't there to tell you you're wrong, not enough, unworthy, all of these things that we think it's trying to tell us. It's saying, hey, you need to give your attention here for a moment, because there's something that's blocking you, or something that could potentially block you. So let's explore this. Let's understand it. Let's learn from what's happened in the past, so we can move forward without having to push or force or resist or control or manipulate or try to like force our way through this. Let's learn, so we have the tools, the wisdom, the access to the energy to walk through. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to pass to you, Paul.
All right. We are thrown together with someone we have to work with. We automatically dislike them without really knowing why. Or perhaps we experience it the other way around. The person doesn't like us, again, for reasons we don't understand. The emotions come up, might be jealousy, irritation, envy, resentment, bitterness, blame, any of these. What I intuit very clearly was no group was able to reach its highest potential unless the participants seek to understand and work through these emotions. Maya leaned forward. That's exactly what we've been doing. Working through these emotions that have come up, the resentments from where we were together before.
I'm trying. I'm sorry, I have to butt in. I am
Yeah.
trying so fucking hard to work on those emotions. Those emotions fucking kill me a lot of the times. And fuck, do they fucking, so many of them, you know, so many. And that's been something that I've been focusing on, is my emotions and how I react to them and how I feel, and just the emotion, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck.
This is intense in my psyche right now, because that I feel like, Jen, this is something you and I have walked through. Like there's a reason we were still sitting here. You know what I mean? Because we've gone through some shit that most people wouldn't still be sitting here.
Yeah.
And reading this is like, fuck. You know, it's heavy. It's intense.
Yeah.
So
It
it's just,
is.
it's neat to see. Oh, the puppy.
I know.
Like Mr. G, we say, I
He's
did
like, did you say how cute I was? Let me just look at you now.
it. I know. My baby.
But it's true, Paul. And like I honor the journey that we're on, because we each of us have had our own work to do before we can come together. And I think that's the other piece, is that there's, just like in the previous insights
Yeah.
that they had talked about, right? Being able to learn how to tap into your own energy, learn how to work with the earth and the elements and the beauty that's in this earth and within us, to amplify our own energy instead of taking it from others, right? So in those conversation pieces, we have to first learn how to work with our own energy in a way that we no longer try to take energy from others during those conversations, namely those parts of the conversations where we're working through this, instead of trying to control the other to see our point of view or to see our way or to see whatever the case is.
Right.
And each of us have gone and are doing our own work. And in those spaces where we're able to come together, and then we work through a part of it, right? And then we continue our journey, and then doing more of our own work, and then come back together and work through another part of it. And I think there's a beauty to that that we haven't really been able to put words to.
Right. This
Yeah.
is helping clarify the words.
Yeah.
Were you sure? Were you shown your birth vision? I asked. Yes, Charlene replied, but I couldn't get any further. I didn't have enough energy. All I saw was that groups were forming, and I was supposed to be here in this valley, in a group of 7. Presently, the sound of another vehicle far to the north attracted our attention. We can't stay here, Curtis said. We're too exposed. Let's go back to the cave. Charlene finished the last of the food and handed me the plate. Having no extra water, I placed it in my pack dirty and sat down again. Curtis slipped through the mouth of the cave and sat down across from me beside Maya, who smiled faintly at him. Charlene sat to my left. The operative has been left outside the cave, still bound and gagged. Is everything okay outside? Charlene asked Curtis. Curtis looked nervous. I think so, but I've heard some more sounds to the north. I think we need to stay in here until dark. For a moment, we all just looked at each other, each of us obviously trying to raise our energy. I looked at the others and told them about the process of reaching the world vision I had seen with Feynman's Soul Group. When I had concluded, I looked at Charlene and asked, what else did you receive about this clearing process? All I got, Charlene replied, was that the process couldn't begin until we come totally back to love. That's easy to say, Curtis said. The problem is doing it. We all looked at each other again, then simultaneously realized the energy was moving to my end. The key is to acknowledge the emotion, to become fully conscious of the feeling, and then to share it honestly, no matter how awkward our attempts. This brings the emotions fully into present awareness and ultimately allows it to be realigned or releg- relegated to the past where it belongs. That's why going through the sometimes long process of saying it, discussing it, putting it on the table clears us so that we're able to return to a state of love, which is the highest emotion.
Just describing everything that we just talked about.
Every time. Wait a minute, I said. What about Charlene? There may be residual emotions toward her. I looked at Maya. I know you felt something. Yes, Maya replied, but only positive feelings, a sense of gratitude. She stayed and tried to help. Maya paused. Studying Charlene's face, you tried to tell us something about the ancestors, but we didn't listen. I leaned toward Charlene. Were you killed too? Maya answered for her. No, she wasn't killed. She had gone to try to appeal to the soldiers one more time. That's right, Charlene said, but they were gone. Maya asked, who else feels something toward Charlene? I don't feel anything, Curtis said. What about you, Charlene? I asked. What do you feel toward us? Her gaze swept across each member of the group. There don't seem to be any residual feelings towards Curtis, she said, and everything is positive toward Maya. Her eyes settled on mine. Toward you, I think I feel a bit of resentment. Why? I asked. Because you were so practical and detached. You were this independent man who wasn't about to get involved if the timing wasn't perfect. Charlene, I said, I already sacrificed myself for these insights as a monk. I felt it would have been useless. My protest seemed to irritate her, and she looked away. Maya reached over and touched me. Your comment was defensive. When you respond that way, the other person doesn't feel heard. The emotion she harbors then lingers in her mind because she continues to think of ways to make you understand, to convince you. Or it goes unconscious. And then there's ill feelings that dulls the energy between you two. Either way.
So I'm gonna butt in. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For example, my husband and I, we were having a conversation and yesterday at lunch, and instead of listening to him, I just kept overpowering him and I wasn't listening to his words. I just kept butting in and wanting him to listen to what I was fucking saying instead of taking time and listening to him. And well, I noticed it and I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I need to let him speak. Like, why am I taking his words and trying to take it into my words and overpower him so he could hear me? Why can't I sit and listen and hear him? You know? So that was a lot of emotions too, because it just, at the time, I felt so right. But then when I sat and thought about it, I'm just like, it was so wrong. It just, I need to sit and listen sometimes and feel and not overpower anybody that is trying to speak to me, if that makes any sense.
Does.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even necessarily about right and wrong because those don't exist. Those are just words and energies, right?
Well,
But it's about coming into the conversation. What intention do we have with this conversation? If the intention is to be heard, then maybe we name that, right? Or if the intention is to connect, then that requires that intentional listening, where, like, just as they're describing, when one person's speaking, nobody else speaks until they're completely done. And we're making eye contact and we are present in the way that we're not trying to formulate what we're going to say, right? Trust that when it's our time to speak, what's meant to be said is going to come up. And in that space, everybody gets to be heard. And then the other piece is that If you're not in a capacity to be able to do that, because we're not always in that capacity, then naming that and doing, we can do that in such a loving way too. Like, you deserve my full presence when you speak, and I can't offer that right now. So can we table this conversation and come back to it in 2 hours? You know, or come back to it tonight, so that way I can be fully present with you. And like, that is one of the deepest expressions of love, right? Saying you deserve full presence with what you say, because your words are important and powerful and profound,
Mhm.
you
And I
know.
don't
And
ever
then,
want him to,
no, you're good, go ahead.
I just don't ever want him to feel that he can't speak to me, you know, because I lash out on him, or, you know, I want my son and my husband to be able to come to me and speak to me and not have those angry words towards them, you know. I want that, and I'm going to work on that, you know.
Yeah.
This
Definitely.
book has helped me learn how to have better communication, because that in actually it was in the Celestine Prophecy, but the the way the conversation is going, like I become aware it's your turn to speak and it's my turn to listen. If I'm observant in the conversation, if I'm present in the conversation, I'm able to know when it's my turn to speak and when it's my turn to listen. And trying to practice that and learn how to do that has been a huge, this book's been a huge help for that, because it's that timing is very clear if I'm observant and if I'm actually listening, not planning what I'm saying, you know.
And it's
Yeah.
fucking crazy because it's only been what, about 30 minutes, and I just feel so sucked into it. Like I've already read the whole book with you guys, you know. It's fucking crazy. Like, I feel it. Like, yeah, it's awesome. Thank you for letting me join. It's amazing.
Yes, thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay.
Either way, the emotions the emotion remains a problem, getting in the way. I suggest you acknowledge how she could be feeling that. I looked at Charlene. Oh, I do. I wish that I had helped. Maybe I could have done something. If I had had the courage. Charlene nodded and smiled. How about you? Maya asked, looking at me. What do you feel towards Charlene? I guess I feel some guilt, I said. Not so much as guilt about the war, but about now, this situation. I had been withdrawn for several months. I think if I had talked to you immediately after returning from Peru, maybe we could have stopped the experiment earlier, and none of this would be happening. No one replied. Are there any other feelings? Maya asked. We only looked at each other. At this point, under Maya's direction, each of us focused on connecting inside, with building as much energy as we could. As I focused on the beauty around me, a wave of love swept through my body. The muted color of the cave walls and the floor began to brighten and glow. Each person's face began to appear more energized. A chill ran up my spine. Now, Maya said, we're ready to figure out what we intended to do this time. Again, she appeared to be in deep thought. I knew this was going to happen, she said finally. This was part of my birth vision. I was led to the amplification process. We didn't know how to do this when we tried to stop the war on the Native Americans. As she spoke, I noticed a movement behind her against the cave wall. At first, I thought it was a reflection of light, but then I detected a deep shade of green, exactly like the one I witnessed earlier. When observing Maya's soul group, as I struggled to focus on the foot square blob of light, it swelled into a full holographic scene, receding into the walls itself, full of fuzzy, human-like forms. I glanced at the others. No one seemed to see the image except me. This, I knew, was Maya's soul group. And as soon as I had this realization, I began to receive an inflow of intuitive information. I could see her birth vision again. Her higher intention of being born to her particular family, her mother's illness, the resulting interests in medicine, particularly the mind-body connection, and now this gathering. I clearly heard that no group can reach its full creative power until it consciously clears and then amplifies its energy. Once free of the emotions, Maya was now saying, a group can more easily move past power struggles and dramas and find its full creativity. But we have to do it consciously by finding a higher self-expression in every phase. Curtis's blank look provoked more explanation. As the eighth insight reveals, Maya continued, if we look closely at another person's face, we can cut through any facades or ego defenses that may be present and find the individual's authentic expression, his or her real self. Ordinarily, most people don't know what to focus on when talking to another. Should it be the eyes? It's hard to focus on both. So which one? Or should it be the feature that most stands out, such as the nose or mouth? In truth, we're called upon to focus on the whole of the face, which with its uniqueness of light and shadow and alignment of features is much like an ink blot. But within this collection of features, one can find an authentic expression, the soul shining forth. When we focus in love, love energy is sent to this higher self aspect of the person, and the person will seem to change before our eyes as his or her greater capabilities shift into place.
Right there, right there. That is the medicine. It is not in anything other than how we go forward and see people, treat people, perceive people, right? If I can go forward and using my kids as the example, right? Our kids become what we tell them, how we treat them. And for the first 7 years, I treated my kids like they were meaningless, things I had to control, a responsibility, something I had to do, all of the things, right? Oh my God, I love your dog so much. Your dog's freaking adorable. But when I began to acknowledge them as some of my most profound teachers, as my best friends, as fellow beings that are walking this path with me, or the best way to describe it is I heard once the Dalai Lama, I think, has people that are able to maybe it wasn't the Dalai Lama, but it was somebody, but part of the mentorship is that you get to serve that person, right? And so seeing this as like an honor and a privilege that I got chosen to be able to serve and support these beings that are brought to earth and treating them as God, as something holy to worship and to honor and to love, right? And then they become that. So like when we speak, I can either speak to you as, and this is me saying this for me, especially in this freaking office, I can either see my team, right, as these people who don't know how to do their fucking job and can't do anything on their own and mess up and send financials to the wrong person. And now we have to call a freaking community or a board president and explain what's going on because they're going to potentially leave because of this stupid goddamn mistake where she just paid fucking attention. Right. So I could go and have that conversation with her from that capacity. Or I can go and have the conversation with her knowing that she is a high being of this universe. She's an expression of the God and the goddess, just as I am. Mm-hmm. And I can go and ask her, hey, how can I support you? Because I know she just had a death in the family yesterday. Be like, hey, what can I do to support you? Do you need some extra time to gather yourself? Do you need to, like, what can we do to support you? Because this is out of your character, right? This is telling me that maybe you need a little additional time to get yourself back together. It's a big thing to grieve. And so remembering that, you know, the people that activate me and activate me in the crunchiness are our biggest teachers in unconditional love, because they give us an opportunity to love them as representations of parts of ourselves that we don't know how to love. How would I respond if this was God? How would I respond if this was the Buddha, the Dalai Lama, the President of the United States, whatever person holds that representation for you, right? How would I say? What would I say? How would I talk? What energy would I hold? What words would I use when I speak to this person? And then speaking to everybody that way, every single person,
Yeah.
Yeah,
every single
definitely.
being.
Yeah, definitely need to work on that. Definitely.
And it all starts by learning how to speak to yourself that way.
Yeah.
That's the first piece. Looking in the mirror and
The
saying,
hardest piece.
it can be, yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
recognizing that only we know how, only we know how, like, our own unique flavor of being treated as holy and sacred, because it's different for everybody. The version of being treated holy and sacred to me is different than what it is to you, Paul, or to you, Des. And that's why it's so beautiful that there's so many of us, because then I get to learn from you, Paul, of how to expand, how to treat people in a holy and sacred way based on how you treat me in that way, in ways that I couldn't even understand or fathom or imagine. Or you, Des, or you, puppy dog. I love you. But that's where it comes to, you know, having these communities, having our tribes. We get to learn the different ways of doing
Yeah. All great teachers have always sent this kind of energy towards their students. That's why we're great teachers. But the effect is even greater with groups who interact this way with each member, because each person sends the other's energy. All of the members rise to a new level of wisdom, which has more energy at its disposal. And this greater energy is then sent back to everyone else in what becomes an amplification effect. And that's something that goes back to what I had just said about learning how to communicate through this book. Like, even if I don't want to be in the conversation, still sending you the energy and the love that you deserve to get your point across until it's my turn. That's fucking hard and huge, but it's become a practice. Like, it's become almost effortless because I paid attention. I started listening to that, and I don't like those. I know what I don't like. I don't like those crunchy conversations. So if I send you the energy to express your point, it helps the communication between the group or between the two of us.
Yeah. And it allows like everybody to feel heard. And so then we're actually able to receive information and share information instead of the focus solely being on trying to be heard, right? It's about sharing instead of, no, hear me. You have to hear me. You have to hear me. Yeah.
I watched Maya, attempting to find her higher expression. No longer did she appear tired or reluctant in any way. Instead, her features revealed a certainty and genius she had not expressed before. I glanced toward the others and saw that they were similarly focused on Maya. When I looked at her again, I noticed that she seemed to be taking on the green blue of her soul group. She was not only picking up on their knowledge, she seemed to be moving into a kind of harmony with them. I'll go ahead and pass.
Got it. I'll take it. All right. Maya had stopped speaking and was taking a deep breath. I could feel the energy shifting away from her. I have always known that groups could acquire a higher level of functioning, Curtis said, especially in work settings, but I haven't been able to experience this until now. I know I came into this dimension to be involved in transforming business and shifting our view of business creativity so that we can ultimately utilize the energy sources in the correct way and implement the ninth insight, automation of production. He paused in thought, then said, I mean, business is too often labeled as the greedy villain, out of control and no conscience. And I guess it's been exactly that in the past. But I felt as though business too was moving into a spiritual awareness and that we needed a new kind of business ethic. I'm like getting truth bumps. I feel like he's talking directly to me. Ugh. At that moment, I saw another movement of light directly behind Curtis. I watched for a few seconds, then realized I was seeing the formation of his soul group as well. As with Maya's group, when I focused on the emerging image, I was again able to pick up on their collective knowledge. Curtis was born in the peak of the Industrial Revolution occurring just after World War II. Nuclear power had been the final triumph and shocking horror of the materialist worldview. And he had entered with the vision that technological advancement could now be made conscious and moved in full awareness toward its destined purpose. Only now, Curtis said, are we ready to understand how to evolve business and the resulting new technology in a conscious manner. All the measures are now in place. It's not an accident that one of the most important statistical categories in economics is the productivity index, the record of how many goods and services are produced by each individual in our society. Productivity has steadily increased because of technological discoveries and the more expansive use of natural resources and energy. Through the years, the individual has found ever greater ways to create. As he spoke, a thought came to me. At first, I decided to keep it to myself, but then everyone looked my way. Doesn't the environment damage that economic growth? Doesn't the environmental damage that economic growth is causing form a natural limit to business? We can't go on like we have, because if we do, the environment will literally fall apart. Many of the fish in the ocean are already so polluted we can't eat them. Cancer rates are increasing exponentially. Even the AMA says that pregnant women and children should not eat commercial vegetables because of the pesticide residue. If this keeps up, can you imagine what kind of world we'll be leaving our children? As soon as I had said this, I recalled what Joel had said earlier about the collapse of the environment. I could feel my energy falling as I felt the same fear. Suddenly, I was hit with a burst of energy as each of the others stared in an effort to find my authentic expression again. I quickly reestablished my inner connection. You're right, Curtis said, but our response to this problem is already occurring. We've been advancing technology with a kind of unconscious tunnel vision, forgetting that we're here on an organic planet, an energy planet. But one of the most creative areas of business is the field of pollution control. Our problem has been trying to depend on government to police the polluters. Polluting has been against the law for a long time, but there will never be enough government regulation to prevent the illegal dumping of waste chemicals or the midnight venting of smokestacks. This polluting of the biosphere won't completely stop until an alarmed citizenry pulls out their video recorders and takes it upon themselves to catch these people in the act. In a sense, business and the employees of business must regulate themselves. Maya leaned forward. I see another problem with the way the economy is evolving. What about all the displaced workers who are losing their jobs as more of the economy is automated? How can they survive? We used to have a large middle class and now it's diminishing rapidly. Curtis smiled and his eyes brightened. The image of his soul group swelled behind him. These displaced people will survive by learning to live intuitively and synchronistically, he said. We all have to understand there's no going back. We're already living in the information age. Everyone will have to educate themselves the best they can, become an expert in some niche, so that they can be in the right place to advise someone else or perform some other service. The more technical the automation becomes and the more quickly the world changes, the more we need information from just the right person arriving in our lives at just the right time. You don't need a formal education to do that. Just a niche you've created for yourself through self-education. Yet for this flow to be optimally established across the economy, the stated purpose of business must shift into higher awareness. Our guiding intuitions become most clear when we approach business from an evolutionary perspective. Our questions must change. Instead of asking what product or service that can develop to make the most money, we're beginning to ask, what can I produce that liberates and informs and makes the world a better place, yet also preserves a delicate environmental balance? A new code of ethics is being added to the equation of free enterprise. We have to come awake wherever we are and ask, what are we creating, and does it consciously serve the overall purpose for which technology was invented in the first place? To make everyday subsistence easier, so that the prevailing orientation of life can shift from mere survival and comfort to the interchange of pure spiritual information. Each of us has to see that we have a part in the evolution toward lower and lower subsistence cost, until finally the basic means of survival is virtually free. We can move toward a truly enlightened capitalism if, instead of charging as much as the market will bear, we follow a new business ethic based on lowering our prices. A specified percentage is a conscious statement of where we want the economy to go. This would be the business equivalent of engaging in the ninth insight force of tithing. Holy shit.
Capitalism. Fucking A. That was
This statement right here. We can move toward a truly enlightened capitalism if, instead of charging as much as the market will bear, we follow a new business ethic based on lowering our prices a specified percentage as a conscious statement of where we want the economy to go.
Yeah. We need this has to be a book the president has to read.
Yeah.
One mushroom journey and the 10th insight.
But that's the piece, is like, that's exactly what he's saying. We need to stop depending on the government.
Right.
Stop depending on the government. It's going to take the citizens. It's going to take us coming together. Take a look at technology. Technology is showing us the way. Right now, we have an entire population of a country looking towards one person, and sure, he has the team to support and like the White House, whatever. But technology shows us that when we are interconnected and all working together as a group, that is how you can make the most profound impact. When you look up something on Amazon or Etsy or whatever, and then you go into your social media, what ads pop up?
What you looked for. Yeah.
What you just looked for, or something similar to that. So the technology that is working with the businesses and the social media and fucking everything, it's making an impact, not because it's depending on one person or one small group of people. It's working because they are all working together synchronistically with each other, allowing each part of that technology to do what it's meant to do. And then it comes together and creates a worldwide web of impact. And so like, that's that piece of letting go of, well, the government needs to do this. That's a way to take the responsibility off of us. That's somewhere where we can place blame instead of remembering our birth vision.
Right.
Like, what can we do individually? Even if it's, I'm going to choose to do research on the companies that make my food. It doesn't even mean you need to make a change in what you buy, but I'm going to choose to educate myself. Or I'm going to choose to carve out time every month so I can go and fill up my water bottles over at the creek with fresh water instead of paying these companies that process so much plastic for individual tiny bottles of water. I'm no longer going to support them, and instead I'm going to lean into the mother. Or where am I going to spend my money? And I was thinking about this. I have, my ex-husband and his partner. They have 2 incomes and are still struggling. And that's not to say I'm not struggling, but I have 1 income. And there's nothing that's better or worse. It's simply awareness and taking a look and witnessing. But me bringing in less than they bring in combined, I am choosing where to put my money to be able to create an impact in the world, right? Where am I choosing to spend my time, my attention, my money, and my energy? And over the years, I mean, I was married to the guy. Like, I was there too. And we were married and we were struggling. We had our, car taken away. We had all of it because we couldn't pay our bills with 2 incomes. But I was also not being mindful. I wasn't being intentional. I wasn't taking responsibility because I'm just the consumer. I'm not the one that's creating it. I'm not the business. I'm not the government. It's not my job to regulate. It's theirs.
Right.
Right? But what am I doing? I am part of it. We are all a part of it. And it can be something as simple as I'm going to wake up and look in the mirror and tell myself, I love you. And that's it. That can be an impact. That can be a change. Sorry, off my pedestal.
Amen, sister.
Looks like a good time to stop. We'll just start back up at that same paragraph. That's a great place to restart too.
Yeah, like let all of this just simmer.
Yeah.
Do you have it marked? Because I'm not going to remember.
Yeah, I always have my bookmark.
It's at Charlene.
Yeah, but we'll read that other paragraph first.
Okay,
Attention.
perfect.
Great to have company. Des, it was awesome you showed up.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Super
I
fun.
want
Thank
to
you, both
share.
of you.
I want to share real quick before we leave. I'm going to share my screen and let's see. Come to here. Are you able to see the Sacred Wilds in the screen I'm sharing right now?
Yep.
Okay. So if we come up here to the path and we go into that, here there's the 9 ways of being. You can watch all the replays of the Sunday gatherings. This is from the first cycle last year. This is the cycle that's going right now, cycle 1. And each way of being, you have some movement practices, just different practices, videos, resources. And if you scroll all the way down to the very end, you'll see the book club replays. And so here you have The Alchemist, the Celestine Prophecy, which is the first book in the series that we're reading right now. And then The 10th Insight, which is the book that we're reading right now.
Also, I'll definitely be going back to it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, all of the replays are right here. And you can also find it on YouTube under the Sacred Wild.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I love you guys. Thank you for being here and allowing this space. It is so perfect as I walk into this day. I was feeling very defeated today.
Yeah, thank you for holding space, both of you. I much needed this. It was so good to hear other people's words and thoughts, and it just makes you feel. It makes me feel good.
Mhm.
It's just it's a good start to the day. The book, even though I came in halfway through, it just such a connection. Oh my goodness. Like all of those words and like just to be here in the moment with the both of you, it's beautiful and awesome. So thank you for letting me join.
Absolutely. We do
And
have
Mr.
a
Kissy.
we do have a rising ritual that we do on Fridays at 6 a.m. over Zoom. And then we have the Sunday gathering that happens at 9 a.m. on Sundays over Zoom as well. So if any of those call to you, if you just need a little boost, pick me up, feel free to join.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And then the book club is every day?
Thursday. Every Thursday.
Every Thursday. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Every day does sound easy, but
I know,
What?
right? It's a lot of time, I know.
what a life that would create.
I know, right? Eventually we'll all get there.
Love you
All
guys.
right, guys. Love you.
All right, love you
Have a
both.
beautiful day.
Stay blessed.